Welcome to the July 27th edition of the PFF Forecast. I'm George. I'm joined by Eric, and we decided that you'd heard enough of just us yammering on the podcast. So today, Drew Dinsick of NBC Sports Edge. Also, you may know him of his whale capper fame and the Deep Dive podcast that he does with Andy Molitor, also a friend of the podcast. We're going to have a fun time today. We're going to learn, among other things, where Eric got the phrase brother in Christ from. And then we're also going to talk about NFL football, what Drew thinks is worth betting on for this season, and also what we think will happen in the betting space this year and going forward. So it'll be a lot of fun. Let's rock. Eric, you got made fun of for having a mic that was a little bombastic, shall we say. Drew asked you before we were about to record, where does brother in Christ come from? And I don't know. So
can I interrupt? I think I have a prediction. This is going to prove how dedicated a listener I am of the PFF forecast.
Member of the syndicate.
Eric went on some bachelor party or something over the summer, and everybody was saying it, and he got a kick out of it. And he's like, you know what? This is going to make me more relatable. I'm going to bring it into the lexicon, and this is going to be my thing for the football season. That's what happened.
I wish it was that like elaborate and fun. It actually was our mutual friend, and when we were in Boston, George, you weren't able to come out with us that one night, but we went out with Sam Schwartzstein, who ran the rules for the XFL, really bright guy, really fun guy. And I want to say like he bought a beer or something. He was like, my brother in Christ, thank you. And walked like as a goof. And I lost it. I honestly lost it. And I was like, dude, can I use this? And he's like, yeah, I think you can. So that was, and then I think if you follow his Twitter, like the acronym BIC is like littered throughout. So that was, and then I just kind of got more comfortable. I mean, honestly, nothing adds a little bit of an oomph, right? A well-placed BIC is pretty powerful.
Drew, I get a lot of text messages from Eric that have BIC. And the first time I saw it, I was like, did someone like trick Eric into an acronym that he doesn't understand? Because it looks really close to something that is not what he's intending to say.
Of course. Of course.
And then I was like, what the hell is he saying? And then I finally put it together. I was like, oh, it's brother in Christ. And as someone that was raised devoutly Catholic, was an altar boy from like age, 7 on, I am very familiar with the lexicon and my brethren in his Lord's name, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Amazing. You picked it up from a guy named Schwartzstein. Yeah. I feel like that's part of the inside joke there, but yeah, no, it's okay. It's been really the point was it's been a joy listening to you guys all summer. I really feel like you set the market on a lot of opinion because you were sort of the first ones digesting some of the major things that changed over the NFL season. So, it must be fun to you to sit back now and kind of see the echoes sort of, reverberate around the space and change a little bit as they bounce off certain portions, whether they be soft or sharp. So it's interesting.
Drew, I appreciate that. And we try, but, Eric and I are not, we can't compete with some of the members of the community that are in real live syndicates,
It's true. It's true.
There's only so much that we can do,
I don't have 85 hours in a week to work. I just have the 80. So that means sometimes I lose 2 consecutive weeks. But I want to bring this back because Drew, you're being very complimentary, but I will say, obviously you won the Bet the Process Calcutta, if I'm not mistaken, right? With the Rams Super Bowl. Right?
Yeah, that was 2022 that was the high point of my year financially.
But I bring it back though. The 2022 NBA draft, you had a great segment on Gil Alexander's show where you basically dog walked the public through the Paolo Banchero #1 overall pick and why it had a chance, and you ended up being like spot on. It was one of the best betting pieces of betting content I've seen. Second to Simon Hunter. I think
it's actually 1,000th behind every Simon Hunter piece of content.
Fair enough. It goes Simon Hunter first segment, Simon Hunter second segment, Ross Tucker's Athletic Greens ad read in the middle of those two segments.
Yeah,
and
where
then,
he somehow
said, Drew on Gil's show is a fourth placer there.
Yeah, Ross Tucker's ability to work his poor guest into the Athletic Greens ad read, absolutely sensational. And for anyone that doesn't know what we're talking about, go listen to like 2-3 podcasts back where we addressed a particular interview on our friend Ross Tucker's podcast.
Athletic Greens.
Yeah, I'm making a comeback.
Incredible.
One of the things that we've done on this podcast that actually has been a lot of fun is to talk more about the betting space and ways that people can get involved with betting. I've always loved Calcuttas. I haven't had the time to do more of them. And I don't have, I think it's one of those things that are challenging because you do need a group of people to do it with you. It's kind of like an auction fantasy league. Like it took me forever to get my group of friends to do it because it's a thing. But I do think our audience would really enjoy hearing about, what you talking through kind of the Calcutta, what you ended up doing, what your strategy was and kind of how you won that. Because it's a really cool, it was a very competitive group of some of the best sports bettors in the space.
Yeah, I mean, the Calcutta is effectively, if you're familiar with auction, way an auction works for fantasy football players, it's somewhat similar. You have to come up with a fair price for every single player or every single team in the pool, and you have to also sort of handicap your competition. Who's going to pick, who's going to price what higher than market. How much do I even weight market ratings versus my own ratings? And just in general, depending on when you get in the Calcutta, if you're one of the winners of sort of the first couple of teams, then you're immediately on price enforcement mode, right? You need to make sure that what you've got becomes plus EV if it's not already plus EV based on what you think the projection of the total pot's going to be. It's incredibly fun. It kind of grew mostly out of college basketball because that was sort of a way of getting people skin in the game for the tournament. You got 64 teams in the bracket. Every team, depending on how you structure the payout, you can come up with innovative ways to have everybody bidding and wanting certain teams. It's fun because you don't really know what the pot's going to be until it's over. And if the payout is based on percentage of the pot, then it's a dynamic process where as a team comes in, you have to kind of evaluate like, okay, well, that was 5% over what I thought it was going to go for. Now, either the pot is gone up because of that, or I am particularly low on that team. And you have to kind of adjust in the moment as far as, what your bidding strategy is going to be. And, because of the players I was playing with, this of course is, Rufus and Jeff of Bet the Process, who started this, at least with the kind of the professional group that was part of the one that I was involved in most recently.
Was Simon Hunter in it or?
No, he didn't participate. His syndicate is too sharp for us. We wouldn't invite them. So, in seriousness, I recognized the hard way the first time I played with those guys that I was small stack. And if you're small stack, then you have a lot less flexibility in terms of price enforcement. You have to be a lot more careful about your strategy bidding because, you don't want to end up with one team that has minus EV when you're playing high stakes. It's just absolutely miserable experience. And so, kind of broadening the network a little bit, getting a couple other players to, kind of pull some liquidity definitely helped us when we ended up bidding on the Rams. We had the Rams and the Bills that year. I still think that, that was, it is, again, when you're playing against sharp players like this, a lot of it comes down to luck. The Rams were lucky to win that Super Bowl. And I thought that the Bills obviously were on the wrong side of a coin toss. And
Were they,
you know,
where did they rank price wise at the end of it? And where did you end up getting them? So did you get them early? And because that's, I think, the really fascinating thing. So when you're playing, like, I think the difference for people out there, like if you do an auction league in football, you have a cap. This is the uncapped nature of this is really wonderful, and it can be scary, but ultimately, you know, it's I think it's one of the great joys of it. So that makes it really tricky, right? Because you've got to figure out, well, if I bet, you know, just to make it simple, if I bid like $500, I win a team $500 in the beginning, it's the first team. Well, if every other team is going for $50, then I'm kind of screwed.
Yeah, no, but yeah, without question. I think the Rams were third off the board. Okay. So they were early in the process. We ended up getting them for $5,000 under our reserve price. My strategy going into it was I kind of wanted the Rams because that was a pretty obvious hole in my portfolio broadly as the futures went, because starting the season last year, I was like, man, if this team has one injury, they can kiss any hope of a playoff run goodbye. Ultimately, not only did they not have a key injury, they ended up getting stronger based on acquisitions over the balance of the season. And so here we are, the best price is long gone. And I'm like, man, I don't have any Rams. I better plug that hole. And this was a good opportunity to do that. And they ended up coming up early in the bidding. I was a little over Rams market price to win the Super Bowl as playoffs started. I was a lot over Bills market price to win the Super Bowl last year. And so that was who we ended up with. And it wasn't a huge surprise. We didn't get in many bidding wars. And again, you know, like the golf, they do golf ones as well. And those are chaos because everybody prices are usually like, there's not consensus on what fair price is for golfers at all. You look at Data Golf versus Bookmaker versus Pinnacle, like the prices are not like, you know, just everybody agrees. So that's a little more chaotic with NFL futures. I mean, the general kind of power ranking approach versus the future market approach, all of it was telling you that, okay, this team is worth this much of the pot. And so you kind of, I felt like we had pretty strong reserve prices there. So anyway, fun way to start the year. And then the Paolo Banchero, being right when Woj was wrong, that probably will go down as the pinnacle for me in doing media in space, just because
I don't know.
Will Woj ever be wrong again?
Oh, come on.
Yeah,
I'm definitely not going to get.
There's only
like getting Schefter. Yeah.
Look, Drew. If you want to take Quay Walker next time and say him, it's going to cost you one media appearance check.
Oh no! Are you going to get some sports cards in return? For
I want, like, yeah. So if you're going to take the Quay Walker, I want
Calcutta, but with rookie cards.
I want a.
You know what? That's a great point.
Zach Wilson rookie card, because, you know, if you get inside information on the libidinous activities of the quarterback before everybody else does too, like imagine how much value that's going to be worth. So
that's a great point.
I think, you know, you said something in a tweet that I thought was really I think very important, and one of the reasons why I, you know, really enjoy knowing you and the relationship we've built up. And, you know, Andy obviously is, you know, not only a great co-host with you on the show, but just also a good guy and a good friend. And, you know, networks matter a lot, right? Like you're never going to be able to, you know, I'm never going to be able to understand NBA basketball the way that you do. You know, you're probably not going to have some of the inside NFL contacts that we do, possibly, or something like that. But like, we're all sort of coming together. And I think that the thing that's, you know, obvious is that we're all laying $1.10. So we all sort of know that that's, you know, it's a tough world. And in banding together, I think is extremely good. And also just sharing, you know, our stories and stuff like that. I think, you know, it can be a lonely world when you go, you know, as I did Sunday, like 0 for $1 million on WNBA bets. And it's just like, it's nice to know that George has done that before on F1 just 3 hours earlier. That's sort of nice. And like I said, I think it's really cool. And I think obviously, you know, the sports betting space is better for it. And I think, you know, 5 years ago, everybody that was on something like, and I know VEASAN's not this old, but like, let's say the equivalent to VEASAN, or everybody that was on, sports betting stuff, the stature of the conversation wasn't nearly as high as it is now. Even given, how, the increases of the Simon Hunters of the world, there's also plenty of Drew Dinsicks, for example. And I think that is an extremely good thing about the space.
No, I agree with that 100%. And your networking point is, I mean, it's tough for me to say that there's anything more important as you kind of escalate as far as a player goes. You get, and this is something that a lot of people that have probably used, that listen to PFF forecasts, that use your tools, particularly those who are kind of, utilizing them in the player prop space. Like at some point, you're going to hit a ceiling where you're not able to get the bet size you want down. And at that point, what do? Do you just live with, what you have? And, if the trend continues and the legal shops, continue to try to limit sharper players, like, it could even be like not only are you not getting the bet size you want down, you're not even getting as much down as you got last year. And at that point, you need a network, period. And I think what I've kind of learned through years of doing this now is over the balance of a season, you're going to have lots and lots and lots of bets that are ultimately coin flips. And presumably you are using enough tools and enough, kind of grinding enough small edges that you're treading water in a market where you're paying a vig like that. That should ultimately be kind of the way you look at the NFL betting in general, in my opinion. You shouldn't look at it like, how much money am I going to make this season? No, stop. Like literally like tread water, don't redeposit. And then over the balance of the season, a couple of times you'll come up with like a bona fide edge. And when you have one in hand, it, and you're like, okay, now, this is real. Like, relative to what I was betting the last handful of weeks, I don't feel, nearly as good about it for whatever reason. Maybe you got a little bit of inside information. Maybe you put together something you saw on tape that nobody else is talking about, or just in general, like you happen to be betting a team that the market is slow to catch up on. And all of a sudden now you have this real bona fide edge on a player prop, on a team, you name it. And, when the big edges do kind of come along over the balance of your season, you have to be able to act on that with like gusto. And if that means, utilizing your network connections to be able to get higher liquidity down on any given thing, be it a NBA draft prop, an NFL draft prop, a player prop that you have, strong, bona fide edge on, you need other people to help you do that sometimes. And, I think in general, a lot of the NFL, a lot of the NBA day by day betting, game by game betting is treading water. And then the big ones come along. And as long as you hit those hard enough at the right times and have the right connections to be able to exercise, as much liquidity as possible on the bona fide edges, then, over the balance of your season, your bankroll growth is going to be a step plot. And every time you hit one of those good ones, it's going to be pretty solid. And that's been the whole story of 2022 for me. Really, like, the NBA, you look at my kind of bankroll, NFL draft, NBA draft, like those were huge, huge, huge days in what ultimately became huge months. And if I didn't have anyone else that I was working with, then forget about it, because nobody in the offshore space is going to write me a bet on the NFL draft. Nobody is going to write me a bet on the NBA draft. No one was writing anyone bets on the NBA draft. So having those kind of the network ability to kind of size correctly when you have an edge like that is huge. And I'm sure as I continue now, I'm certainly not a limit player in the NFL or even close. Like I'm not anywhere close to being able to move lines on Sundays if I would, if I have a strong opinion. But presumably, you do this long enough, you at least get close, if not get there. And, at that point, maybe this isn't, it's a different discussion, but where I'm at right now, like being able to exercise get down as much liquidity as possible when you have a true bona fide edge is kind of the most important name in the game for me.
Yeah, I think, and one example, because I know the drafts, the different leagues don't necessarily maybe appeal to everybody, but even something like New England at Buffalo last year, right? Where that total is at, 40, I believe it opened like 44, right? It gets down to the market's not quite ready to like give it a full 36.5. So we're sitting here and I mean, that, like you said, I'm not a limit player in the NFL, but I probably had like 10 times my normal volume on that game because, there's just certain situations where, if you're in a land where you're making a bunch of 53, 47, as you said, grinding it out, and the world offers you a 60-40, like, and the world offered us a 60-40 with Quay Walker. It also offered us a 60-40 with Lewis Seen to Tampa Bay. And and that one was like, it was false, right? And the Tampa Bay lied to him. Now you still can recover it. You have to give yourself outs. If you also bet Lewis Seen in the first round or Lewis Seen under 35.5, you still won back some of your money. You didn't win the full maximum the way you would have with like a Quay Walker bet, but that's the name of the game, as you said. And I think the hard part is somebody will say, well, Drew, why aren't you just betting the 60-40s?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, and one of the things in education that I learned right near the end of my professor
you learned
tenure
something in education. That's really a first.
Was people don't learn things as well unless they put skin in the game. So so you don't know when the opportunities arise unless you are suffering the wins and the losses in time, right? Like, I think that's where, you do have to live in these markets. And there's also practical aspects of it, like you said, Drew, where if all you're doing is hammering these books when their lines are off, they're going to limit you so quickly. Some of them you actually do want to come in and actually flip coins for a few months, and then they won't limit you, and then you'll have those opportunities. Like, there's a number of like practical reasons why you would want to sit in a market for a while and then strike while the iron's hot. It's just like that's what it's all about in my opinion. And I think this season and this off season and this year has sort of confirmed a lot of that.
Yeah. Well, and the point that I think should be made is like those 60-40 events, sometimes it is a single event. To know that it's a single event, though, you have to have so much information and confidence to spot it. So like, I'll give you an example. My buddy and I who do the super contest, we might go into a week and feel good. We don't know anything. The amount of consistent analysis of the teams, of the injury patterns, or how teams are matching up, you have to follow that so closely to recognize truly a 60-40, right? And that might not be a single event. It might be something that you take advantage of over time, right? You might recognize an edge in a player prop market that you are going to hit, and you're not going to do that if you're a casual bettor. I think that's so. Like, if my question to you would be, because we have a lot of, as you do on your podcast, and if people listen to this podcast looking for another great podcast, that deep dive pod is a great one. What's your recommendation to someone who is maybe a casual bettor, and now as members of the syndicate are obviously more kind of attuned to things than most people, but they have other jobs, right? Like, of course, there are plenty of like really, really smart people out there who aren't spending every single minute of every day really analyzing things to be able to pick up on those. What would you tell those people?
I think there's probably like good advice for a couple of different tiers of bettors, I would say. If you're betting with your gut right now, if you're sitting down and you're making your picks on Sunday morning, like, you got to revise your process from scratch. You have to be able to make a number. You have to make it quantitative. And you have to probably start betting earlier in the week. If you're at that level. And I think most people probably start that way. I know I certainly did. I probably spent too many years just kind of rolling out of bed on Sundays and firing off whatever was left that I didn't lose on college football Saturday. So it's like, that is a big first step, and it's a hugely plus EV step to be able to actually just come up with a fair number. However you do it is fine, but make it as repeatable as possible. And don't build some complex system that you're going to lose interest in, just because you made it too complicated. Like, just keep it simple and, try to make it repeatable and make your own numbers is a good first step. And then if you're already there, if you're betting a little earlier in the week, if you're seeing okay results, or even if you've had really good results, betting into overnights with, whatever numbers you're coming up with. The next absolutely most important thing that you should be paying attention to is the market itself. what is going on between market open when you're betting market close. Most people are really resistant to looking at closing line value when they're in that phase of betting, because they're like, I win, I'm winning, whatever. It doesn't matter if the market's with me or against me. But like, if you kind of that next step of really paying attention to what's going on, market dynamics, and that's literally just paying attention. Like it's a time suck, sure. Like, but if you care about this, you're going to enjoy spending that time doing that anyway. Like I certainly learned that, like, oh yeah, actually I like doing this. But looking at sort of how the market is maturing, when it's moving, why it's moving, and and then if you can take that next step, who's moving it, and or what macro information is moving this market. All that is like extremely valuable. At that point, you're probably ready to kind of size up and take this seriously. I think a lot of people probably take a path where rather than try to take on the major markets in major sports, they pivot to player prop path, and that's a great way to kind of get more familiarity with what it staking and kind of rein in some of the emotional side of betting, which is hard to conquer as well. Dealing with losses and having a bad October. That's
a bad month.
Yeah, if you have a bad month, you need to be able to.
What's
to,
that? I
get
don't.
by it.
Not aware. I actually never had. One of the great things about me, Drew, is I don't have back-to-back losing weeks. It's one of the reasons that I'm able to trade rookie cards for appearances on Action Network.
These months where the Skyline chili is just not tasting as good.
It's not tasting as good.
yeah. These months. Anyway, kind of like if you pivot to the player prop kind of path, you're going to have you're going to have less losing weeks, frankly. You're not going to be able to win as much money, but that's the trade-off. But either way, you can kind of get the emotional side of winning and losing under control. And then maybe you're ready to pivot back to trying to take on major markets. But, I think I'm speaking out of experience mostly. The biggest gains I made were going from betting with my gut to making a number. The second biggest were going from making a number, betting in the blind, to really kind of trying to evaluate and understand the market. I think if you can achieve all of those things, then you start a podcast.
Yeah, and I think that is you've hit on it. Like even in something silly, like I like to bet these alternative leagues, and to your point, like I don't have play-by-play data for like the CFL, right? But I do have, market numbers. I do have, like, I know how to do an ELO rating, right? And I know how to, just like you said, just make a number for a game. So that when the numbers come out, you're like, oh, that's off, or that's up, or, oh, hey, this week I'm only like half a point off in every number. That's probably a good sign every once in a while, and there's nothing to bet. But to your point, like, having like an actual reference point for a game versus just betting by feels, like I don't have the intuition that about certain sports that some others have, right? So I need to be able to have that kind of in place. Can we pivot for a second? Because Drew, I know that you're part of the Restore the Roar contingent here.
I thought we were going to spend the next 35 minutes on the impact of Carlos Dunlap to the Chiefs.
No. So
okay, but wait, before you pivot though, Eric, just in case, just for the people out there, just a quick reminder that all the things that Drew's talking about, player props, making a number, doing analysis, place that you can go get a lot of that, pff.com, and it's coming soon to an app store near you. PFF app. Yes. We get you on the early, actually, I want your input. That'll be the Behind Closed Doors podcast. But 40% off right now at pff.com, promo code PFF40. And if you are a fantasy player, you can get your first deposit matched up to $100 at Best Ball, Underdog Fantasy, which gives you opportunities to play best ball fantasy football, which is great because you don't have to check your league during the season, which is a pain in the ass. First $100 deposit is matched by Underdog Fantasy. And if you play 10 of those dollars, you'll get a free PFF sub. So it's a great idea. Go check it out. Use promo code PFF. download the app, go to underdogfantasy.com, and enjoy your summer a little bit more than Eric, who's just betting CFL and drinking green juice.
No, he's winning though.
I'm winning, and the green juice is fantastic, by the way.
Quick aside before Eric, you launch into this. So Eric and I, have jobs other than doing the podcast that some people are not aware of, but we're on a meeting this morning, and he's on his way. He's walking through Pennsylvania today, and he's got the nice background behind him, trees, good lighting, and he just comes on the meeting and just goes, "Guys, my face is just looking thinner today."
Feeling good.
That's the kind of confidence that I desire to have one day. So
just shit. That's how you know we live in a F prime world versus an F world. To talk in math terms. Okay, speaking of, all right, let's talk now. Drew, the Lions have made for a fun case because obviously the Detroit Lions. So, and we were all a part of that 2020 steam that took them from like 9-1 to win the NFC North to like 6-1 at close. So we've all been stung by the Lions. So while we are high on the Lions, and I think anybody who runs a simulation is going to probably like Detroit, you have jokes being made, like I'm reading from the book of Rohrman as opposed to things like that. And restore the roar, #restore it, all that stuff. I got to get your take here because I'm optimistic about this team, but I'm not ready to say it with a straight face. Where are you on this club? This Detroit Lions team, 6.5 wins, 4-1 to make the playoffs, 10-1-ish to win the NFC North. Where are you on this team?
So to me, they look very clearly like they fit a mold, as kind of an archetype that we see a lot, which is they've invested a lot in the trenches. They have a lot of young talent on this team. They have a coach that the players played hard for last year. They underachieved last year in terms of win-loss. And you kind of mix all that stew together, and it's a easy case. Like, oh, this is a team you should be bullish about. Injury luck bounce. The injury luck's not really going to impact them much because they're a young team anyway. And they actually have a decent amount of depth on some of the key areas where you would be concerned about injuries. So it's not a fragile team. It's not a team that you are really expecting to kind of underachieve. So it's easy to be bullish on this team. I think the schedule did not necessarily break perfectly for them. A lot of their more winnable games come at the end of the season. But I think in general, market expects them to be pretty poor, and I don't think that's fair. And how do you take advantage of that is kind of up for debate. I have kind of completely gotten away from kind of the win total market, traditional win total market. The idea of laying anything close to pick 'em for a full season win total is crazy to me. If I have an edge that's big enough on a win total, then I'm almost better exercising that edge week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4 in the spreads than I am putting a win total bet down in July and crossing my fingers. And so for a team like the Lions, where I think there's true clear upside, trying to attack them in a way where you're getting more bang for your buck makes the most sense to me. And the two ways I did that were Coach of the Year and Defensive Rookie of the Year. And both handicaps I thought were pretty solid, independent of the Lions winning. Well, Lions have to win games for Dan Campbell to get consideration. There's no doubt about that. But they don't have to win the North. This team wins 9-10 games, gets a wild card berth. People are still going to make that case for them, and you're going to get equity on whatever big number you bet in May, June, whatever. Defensive Rookie of the Year, same story. This Lions team is not expected to be good, but they're playing a bunch of poor offensive lines. Bears twice, maybe the most notably. And, so that's an opportunity for Hutchinson to truly get counting stats in what is a really, really small pool of potential winners. And so I think both of those are fun ways to kind of try to attack upside for the Lions. But I think ultimately the reason that most people are kind of gravitating there beyond just the fact that they underachieved on wins relative to point differential last year. And, I've heard a million people now bring up the close games they lost, blah, blah, blah. I think the Packers are vulnerable and people want to find some way to make a bet against that. And it's not obvious what to do with that information. No one has made any kind of a bull case for the Bears. That ship has long sailed. And the Vikings are a little bit of a mystery to folks because I think they have some pretty clear questions that the coaching staff's going to have to answer. And, their schedule also doesn't afford a particularly easy start. So it's not like that, the Lions, I think, are in good shape to get out ahead of this a bit and force a market correction where they're treated as at least league average, if not a little bit better than league average, which is, I think, where you have to rank this roster.
Speaking of, taking advantage in the early parts of the season, 4.5 point underdog at home to the Eagles week 1.
It's a big number.
And a lot of people who are obviously very excited about the Eagles, they're certainly a more popular team, right? I think they picked up AJ Brown. Obviously, you've got Devontae Smith. I also like to think about the way that I think there's a tendency, for fantasy players that are popular to get a little more juice, a little more love. Jalen Hurts, we've talked about him. I think he's great, but that's certainly one of the areas that he's more valuable than, kind of the actual performance on the football field. So I think that's a really interesting point. But here's the biggest one, Drew. You talk about coach of the year. I don't know if you saw this today. Dan Campbell's doing up downs with the team.
Yeah.
I mean, you're telling me that that's playoff bound. I don't see Kevin O'Connell doing that. I'm not seeing Matt LaFleur.
Kevin O'Connell's a good bet to win coach of the year, by the way. But
I don't see Dan Campbell's out there inspiring people. Leader of men.
Yeah, he doesn't fire people. He hires people and inspires people. Drew, I thought you were going to complete that sentence. You're like, to me, they're perfect. You didn't quite do that, but
there are again, they check if you go back and like the surprise teams of our lifetime betting sports, like they check off so many boxes of like the team that surprises you. And so there's a lot to be hopeful for. The Dan Campbell up down thing, that's not crazy that you would even lean on that as like a reason to be bullish about this team, because, if you are that type of coach, that's your MO. You're walking a very razor thin line. Like if you go hard ass like Joe Judge, or Urban Meyer, you lose the locker room on day 2, and then your tenure is over before it started. But if it's like, look, I'm here with you guys and we're working hard together, and like I'm crying after losses because this means so much to me, like that galvanizes teams around you. And Pete Carroll has basically made a career out of kind of being a raw locker room guy. So if Pete Carroll can do it, why not Dan Campbell? And oh, by the way, Dan Campbell goes for on 4th down, for crying out loud. So it's like
true.
He has it may be a swashbuckler mentality with him that he's doing that, but at least he's doing it. He's capturing some plus EV, and I think that's repeatable.
He's a coffee is for closers type of guy. He comes in and that's his
he's like a woke Mike Vrabel. As far as like he's the inspirational guy, but at least he'll go for a 4th down. I agree. And I think, Drew, you bring up something really good. And I know the podcast on Sunday, somebody was like, hey, how do you hedge out of a Brady MVP bet? And, and I think that you make, I do bet win totals, but I haven't bet, I got to be honest with you, I haven't bet a win total of your points in like a few months, just because at this point, like you said, you don't want to be betting into -110 for a number of reasons. And I think one of them, this has gone away a little bit with legalization, but it's still a reality that most people face. It's like the currency uncertainty is big. If you're going to tie your money up for months, the currency uncertainty, Bitcoin and the dollar and stuff like that, that's extreme. But also, like, to your point, like you want these things you want to be able to buy into longer shots. So, one of the things I've liked in this division is, the O'Connell coach of the year thing. Like, I think if they do win 11 games, I think O'Connell's going to get the credit for that. I do like the Rashawn Gary to win defensive player of the year. That's the way to bet into the Packers, because to your point, Green Bay's playoff Super Bowl odds are shorter this year than they were the previous 2 years. And this team's nowhere near as, in my opinion, nowhere near as ready to win the Super Bowl today as they were at this time last year or the year before. But the market is just like you're paying a premium to bet them. You're paying a premium to bet teams like Buffalo. You're paying a premium to short a team like the Bears.
Yeah, you are.
Like, and so I think to your point, finding ways to bet long shots that are correlated into the thing you already want to bet, I think is an extremely smart thing to do.
Gary is a really good one, because you look at the pathway for the Packers. And I think this is actually really interesting. So you talk to anybody that is a Packer supporter, whether they're a fan or not, and you go, why be bullish on the Packers? They lost Devontae Adams, and the joke about Alan Lazard being Hall of Famer, he's a nice guy, but like, whatever. And you'll hear them go, well, the defense is going to be really good. So that notion is already out there. Now, look, the defense could be really good. We know that defense is a tough thing to predict, that injuries happen. And so the defense could be really good. They could lose Jair Alexander again. They could lose Adrian Amos, a whole host of things. But that doesn't mean that they don't have a lot of talented players who could have a really good season, right? And maybe they do still, perform decently well. And if so, that narrative is already in people's heads around the defense being the reason. And so I think that's also important, because people love, when you're betting, these awards, people love to confirm their preconceived notion.
They also like to give the award to a player so on PFF.com, I wrote about Gary. They give it, the TJ Watt's PFF WAR in 2020 was higher than it was in 2021 when he won the award. Gilmore in 18 had a better WAR than he had in 19 when he won the award. Khalil Mack in 2015 had a higher WAR than when he won the award in 16. And then sprinkled in is a bunch of Aaron Donald, which that's kind of like whatever because he's Aaron Donald. But Rashawn Gary was third in the NFL in win rate on pass rushes last year. He was like fourth in pressure rate. Like, he's already a defensive player of the year type player. It's just like you need the variance to hit. And he's only had his career high is 9.5 sacks. So, you double like the conversion rate a little bit. And then he's in an 18 sack range where then he's defensive player of the year. It's that kind of thing where you look at the underlying data. The same thing with the coach of the year, right? Which is why I think I support your Campbell take as well. There have, in the last 6 years of coach of the year, none of them have had a PFF WAR above 4. So you're already skimming off the top, the guys like Herbert, who, Staley's the favorite. You're already skimming off the top Burrow. You're already skimming off the top Mahomes, guys like that. You're dealing in the Tannehill, Baker Mayfield, Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff. Jared Goff was the coach of a coach of the year, or a quarterback of a coach of the year in 2017. Exactly the same archetype at quarterback. So like, that's again a good point there. That's how you win coach of the year. And I think that I like the Campbell bet there. The Aiden Hutchinson one I've already bet. I actually bet Hutchinson. I bet Hutchinson sack props too, some alt sack props, because I think he's going to be pretty good this year. As you said.
The only thing I can add to your Gary take, which I completely agree with, he's got a 10 sack head start. He gets to play the Bears twice. Honestly, look at the defensive player of the year race last year. Like, Myles Garrett became market favorite because he got to play the Bears and got 5 sacks. TJ Watt won the award at the end of the season because he got to play the Bears and got 5 sacks. It literally was that poor of a system that it really did determine defensive player of the year market last year, which is crazy. And he gets to play him twice. The only problem is, our voters going to have a bad taste in their mouth after the Lions go into Lambeau and beat the Packers week 18 to win the North.
Yeah, it's that is a really good point. Dan Campbell, by the way, 18-1.
Yeah. Also, that's a big part of the win total / playoff stuff too. I think it's Bears Vikings week 18. Both of those teams are going to be, the Bears might not be playing to win, but the Vikings are going to be playing that game to win. I don't see a situation where they're resting guys in week 18. There's obviously an off chance that the Detroit Lions, if they needed that win to go over their win total, are playing a Packers team that, in fact, I think these things are correlated. If they need that win to get win 7, there's a pretty damn good chance the Packers are resting people. And so that's another part of the Lions schedule. I know Drew says it doesn't start great, and that's obviously, true. But at the end, they have some pretty big cupcakes, and that's a Dan Campbell team that, I think is going to try hard the whole year.
Yeah.
They're going to try hard the whole year. If you don't mind, I'd like to spend, I don't know, a minute or two in honor of the man that has won the offseason so far, which is Zach Wilson and his New York Jets. Their win total 5.5. Do you see some of the same things that you're seeing with the Lions, or are you fading the Joe Namath, the second coming of Joe Namath, Zach Wilson?
Inclined to fade, mostly because I don't love their offensive system in general. And just for here are 2 quick reasons. The offense was not using the easy buttons last year, and I don't know that Mike LaFleur's got it. And then the way that the team responded to Mike White instead of Zach Wilson in games was obvious. Whoa, that's not a good sign if Mike White is outperforming your number 2 overall pick. That's not to say that he's not going to make a leap. Year 2 quarterbacks leaps are common. But I think, with what is a very crowded AFC and a very crowded division, I'm cool on the Jets. And
I think there's certainly been some jumping that's happened this offseason, but we'll see if it applies to the football field here.
Unbelievable.
The thing that you said about LaFleur is interesting. Both LaFleurs have had opposing defenses who flow to the run game more voraciously than all but a few. They've had, when you look at Shanahan McVay offenses, linebackers are basically in mud. Linebackers were on not on skates, but linebackers were on speed skates, let's say, against the Packers and the Jets running game. So I think that he's going to have to pull the ball out and make some plays on the play action game to sort of slow down defenses this year. And it didn't seem like, as you said, that the younger LaFleur was actually willing to put his quarterback in an easier position last year.
There are 2 second-year quarterbacks that I did make bets on, though.
Trevor Lawrence
this week, and in different ways.
Okay,
and I'll get you guys give me your opinions on these. One is Jags AFC, 80-1.
Okay.
And the other is Trey Lance MVP, 50-1.
Oh,
and the case for both of these is pretty straightforward. I am not sold that the Matt Ryan experience is going to be smooth sailing in Indianapolis. I think there's a larger percent chance in the market is willing to buy into that Ryan is washed, in which case you have 3 very, very susceptible teams in that division around the Jaguars. And you have a professional operation now in Doug Peterson that is already getting rave reviews from the players and the media and everyone covering camp in 3 days. Everybody's like, oh, this is what professional camp is supposed to look like. Cool. That's a good sign. There's still huge problems with the Jags as an organization, particularly above Peterson. But I think just the fact that he is an adult and is running a camp as an adult is a good thing. And I think Trevor Lawrence could potentially benefit substantially from just a little bit more stewardship there. And then, it's so if you squint your eyes real close, or if you go back in time and look and read your own takes about the Bengals last year, probably feel not all that different about the Jags right now. And it's not, it's not to say that they, that all of the, I didn't love basically any of the moves that they made in the offseason, really. But they got talented players. They just didn't value them correctly. So long-term, this maybe doesn't work to where you can, say that you feel better about the franchise the way you do feel about the Bengals right now. But the idea of them potentially making, having some home playoff games isn't crazy to me. And at that point, 80-1 seems like an absolute ludicrous price. Easy schedule too. So Jags, I think and again, the sentiment that I'm picking up early in camp, I think will get echoed pretty aggressively. I think this number moves between now and kickoff, basically. as people kind of like all realize like, oh, wait, maybe that was the dark horse that we didn't see coming. Oh, that's the Cincinnati this year. Like there'll be a little bit of people kind of, connecting the dots, I think.
I'll say this one more thing just to talk about this for 1 second. Next year, the Jaguars have one of the worst cap situations in all football. So they care. I think for some of these teams that you buy into at this 7-1 division price and 6.5 wins and blah blah. Sometimes you're like, you get halfway through the year and like, fuck, this team's not trying. The Jags are going to try this year. So that is second to your point. Like that whether the Raiders and the Jags are good this year, they're both going to try, because next year shit's going to get real for them.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, and it's actually the same thing with the Lions that I like a lot, which is you have this chip on the shoulder. Jared Goff's a good example of this, like trashed, kicked on his way out, just made to basically feel like you don't belong in the league. And I think for Doug Peterson, there's a little bit of that, right? He's like, wait, what did I do wrong besides take a bunch of bum quarterbacks to the playoffs and win a Super Bowl? It's like serve a little ice cream and go for it on 4th down. And, I definitely, when you're thinking about a team, to your point, Eric, that is going to continue, can they put up with a bump or two?
Sure.
That is important, especially if you're looking for some of those longer tail things. You've got to give it as many chances as it can have. And if you stumble, doesn't mean the thing's over, but you can open more pathways with that. I guess the challenge, so if they make it, to the playoffs, they've got to face obviously a gauntlet of teams in the AFC. But one of the interesting things about that is that they will have had a much easier road to that point. And so you might have a situation where in the AFC West, for example, they might get the opportunity to play Kansas City at home, and that gives them just the edge they need to get all the way there.
And I think your point, conditional on making the playoffs, that means Trevor Lawrence is pretty damn good, right?
Sure.
And I think that's where the long shot stuff makes a lot of sense to me. Conditional on them have, like I said, if none of the other, like the Christian Kirk stuff, the Zay Jones stuff, all that, overpaying and all this kind of stuff, with respect to this year, none of it matters if Trevor Lawrence isn't good. And if Trevor Lawrence is meh, then whatever, like you might get over the season win total, blah, blah, blah. But if he's good, like none of it matters. Like he's going to be in a game with a player who might be his equal in somebody like Herbert or Mahomes or something like that, if he's who we thought he was at pick number 1 a couple of years ago, right?
That's right, man. The Jags beat the Bills last year. Why not? Why can't they do it again? I'm being a little facetious there. That was one of the weirdest games of the entire 2021 entire cycle. That was one of the weirdest games. But no, I think the case is strong. Not that they will do it, but that the market price is wrong, right? There's only a couple that you really look at across the current futures board, and you're just like, there's no way that's right. And I think Jags for AFC is one of those.
Is Trey Lance in your? Are you seeing? Because I think the analogy that you would have to make is something along the lines of the Mahomes Andy Reid, connection. Where
I think you're looking for Jackson. You're looking for a Lamar Jackson kind of a year.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, I actually think you're saying the same thing I'm saying, which is you've got a quarterback and a scheme that are both elite.
Yes.
Right. So whether he does a throwing or running is immaterial. It's more of you've got this combination where you only saw one game of it last year, and it wasn't like with Mahomes. You saw one game of him against Denver. They were playing. It was weird. It was week 18. You had backup players playing. Like when Trey Lance came in, it was like, well, we have this Jimmy G offense. We'll do a few things here and there, and it's like it didn't really make sense. And so now you've got like, okay, now the whole thing has been kind of cooked up and like ready for him. Yeah. And so you have this really perfect combination of supremely talented guy offensive scheme that is going to create all of these opportunities. And the guy just kind of like takes the league by storm, right? It's like, it could be that whatever, Mahomes had like 15 touchdowns first 3 weeks or something. It could be, a run of 150 yard, rushing games or whatever it might be. But like people are just like losing their minds in the first 3 weeks.
Yeah. I think the other two key points for this handicap are, I don't think it's 50-50 that the MVP comes from the NFC and the AFC. I think it is biased NFC. Because I think the AFC teams are going to beat each other up. I think the one seed in the AFC probably has 12 wins. And I think if any NFC team distinguishes themselves, gets to say 14, even 13, then, right away, the people who tend to start their voting process by who has the most wins this year? Oh, it's San Francisco. Okay. Wow. They got to 14. That's good. Like the team around Lance is good enough to get to 14 wins. This in a weak NFC, surely. If they stay healthy, I guess is pretty the caveat. And I think, the range of outcomes for a second-year player in Lance who did not look great at times last year, and who did not have a final year of college effectively, they are biased to him looking like a rookie. Like almost certainly, like at least 30% likelihood he looks like a rookie out there. And it's just, he's not ready for this yet. But there's about a 60% chance, because the scheme is good, because the team around him is good, and because in general, I think he has the skill set that can hide some of the flaws of a young quarterback who's inexperienced, i.e. he can run like the wind, and they're going to do designed, interesting running things for him. I think realistically, even in that middle body 60% where he's just kind of a little raw and makes mistakes, he's still putting up a decent statistical performance. And I think the Niners are still in the conversation for the 1 seed. And then there's the sliver of like the 10% chance that like this is like it clicks, and that Shanahan gets the best out of him this year. And that and what we've seen with I think what we saw with Mahomes and what we saw with Lamar Jackson, that it has taken me a long time to kind of really kind of wrap my head around, was like there was a surprise element to those. Like the league wasn't prepared for that. Right. And for whatever reason, just maybe because of the grind of the NFL season, because you can only do so much with how you change your approach and packages and whatever, you can only change your DNA so much from week to week in the NFL. Like there was no adjustment anyone was even really willing to try to really stop what those guys were doing really well in their kind of breakout campaigns. And because Lance is a mystery, that 10% is really intriguing to me. And again, like I look at this NFC and it is probably the most imbalanced between conferences that I can remember in terms of coming up with numbers. It was imbalanced last year, and Russell Wilson left and Matt Ryan left, and Carson Wentz came back and Drew Lock came back. It's like, it's pretty clearly like the team with the most wins, I think, 65-ish% as an NFC team. And whoever that team happens to be, that quarterback is without question in the discussion. And if you have a ticket on him at 50-1, then December, we're talking about 8-1, 6-1, 5-1.
Yeah. And the issue, one of the issues too, is that the Niners are much like the Chiefs in 2017. That team was 10-6. This Niners team was 10-7. So when the quarterback comes in and gets them to 13, 14 wins, it's not going to be the coach that gets coached. It's not going to be, even though he might deserve all the credit. Like, has Andy Reid even come freaking close to winning a coach of the year with Mahomes? Even though I think we all believe that Andy Reid is a really good coach, right? And I think we all believe Shanahan's a really good coach. But to your point about division of credit, if that team wins the 1 seed in the NFC, Lance could be an 8 out of 10 quarterback, much like when Matt Ryan was amazing for the Falcons. That team went 11-5 in 2016. Everybody gravitated, and not that Shanahan could have won coach of the year as an offensive coordinator, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
sure.
The credit goes and rests squarely on the quarterback's shoulders. And I think Lance is going to do enough things that are because of him. Like, his running is going to be him. Like, we're not going to be like, oh, no, his running. I mean, running backs don't matter. It's like, no, when quarterbacks run, we all know. Like, we all know it's the quarterback's gifts that are doing that. And then I think his throws are going to be good enough. You know, and I've placed the same wager as you. I like it a lot.
Okay,
I think it's the only way to bet the Niners, right?
Yes. Hallelujah. Thank you. 100% agree with that because, but and we're preaching to the choir here with George, I guess, but this Niners team was a dropped interception away from going to the Super Bowl where their quarterback had a separated shoulder and a torn thumb ligament. Dude, oh, by the way, that was their fourth straight road game or something absolutely insane. And they were still like a coin flip away.
Drew, it's crazy. Have I told you the situation for that game? I don't know if we've talked about this.
No. So, I was there. I was kind of tuned out. I was there. I was in a luxury box. It was a lot of fun.
So I was gonna go. Okay. I was gonna go to the game and I realized I couldn't bet, I wouldn't be able to get money down. Mm-hmm. And I was going to have to spend all this money to go to the game. And then I was going to spend 7 hours in a car. I was like, fuck that. I'm going to Vegas. So flew in Sunday morning, got a cabana at Stadium Swim. And of course, there were a bunch of PFF guys that were there for the Shrine Bowl or whatever. Yeah. We surprised them. It was, the Bengals are playing the Chiefs and everyone's happy and all this stuff. I am trying to get as much money down on Niners, every Jimmy G prop, Niners alt lines, all these different things. But in Stadium Swim, you either go to a kiosk, or you're in the pool playing rubber duckies. And the kiosk has there's this ATM there that won't let you take out a sizable chunk of money. Of
course.
So I'm missing the Patrick Mahomes collapse trying to get money. So I run out of the Stadium Swim. I have no shirt on. I'm immediately told that I can't do anything without a shirt. So I go buy a stupid shirt. I come back. I'm told I can't do anything without my ID. My ID is on the cabana table back.
As old as time.
So I am trying to coerce an ATM to let me take out more money using it, whatever. I finally get some chunk of money down. I have one of the best is that I had over 235.5 passing yards for Jimmy G.
Look up what he had.
Well, the last play was a -3 yard pass.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah. So it took me under. So I'm sitting there now. This is
in more ways than one, I think. By the way,
this is the culmination. This is the culmination of this season for me, right? I have, and if they win, and they I have these alt lines at 8-1, 12-1. It's going to be a night. So I'm sitting there, third quarter or whatever it is, and I can't even speak. My voice is gone. I'm so excited. And of course, they just absolutely collapsed. The dropped interception was a complete
interception.
Cover, by the way.
I was going to say +3.5 was a great bet.
Yeah, +3.5 was great. I basically ended up, up a little bit, right? But I had all of these things. So what I think we do in redemption for that is I'm gonna get some money down on Trey Lance 50-1. And this is going to be the first of what I think we're going to do this year as a syndicate, which is we're going to bet for the good of the people.
Sounds good.
And when we win, we're going to throw one hell of a party. And so, betting things like this that are long shots, but that are correlated with things that we believe are, have a better than market average chance of happening, I think are the right way to do it. Yeah. There's nothing I'd rather do than throw an amazing party for all of our listeners at Stadium Swim because Trey Lance won MVP.
Let's not do it during a playoff game with the Niners though, because
we're not going to do that.
I'll tell you, as excited as I am for the Trey Lance era and as good as I feel about this bet in particular, and that 50-1 is an absolutely ludicrous price for this, I'm probably going to fade the Niners in their first playoff game.
Yeah. And I think, okay. By the way,
I understand
Caesars is still at 60-1.
Oh wow!
If the last time that I looked, but
you're like
Drew's bringing up a good point. We've kept Drew for far too long, but he's making a great point right now. It's 25-1 on Bet Online, which is actually a fairly strong book.
Yeah, I carpet bombed all the offshore, so don't look.
Yeah, you see all the, but I believe that Caesars is a book that I don't know, man. Like I hope to move as slow sometimes as some of these lines when I'm older. I have as George knows, I have a hard time like just like sitting still in life. But I think that this one actually does have 60-1. Let me make sure quickly. Lance. Oh, this is why you should never code in public, kids.
Oh no.
All right, Lance, 50-1 now on Caesars. It was 60-1 when I bet. Yeah, so look at Drew just moving the market to his price here.
Yeah, it's Simon Hunter-esque, really, is what it is.
These are thin pools. It doesn't take much. I don't get much credit for this, really. It's the awards pools, and like it's more than there's more liquidity here than there were for draft props, certainly. But these kind of niche markets, like you breathe on them and they react because
they clam up.
Yeah,
let's get you out of here on this, Drew. You understand, been a part of the betting space as well as anyone. Where is it going? What are some of your hypotheses around, what sports betting looks like this year, 3 years, 5 years, whatever juncture that you want to take a stab at?
I think we're headed to an exchange-based model for players like us. I don't know how long it's going to take to get there. I don't know what that final form is going to look like. There are at least a dozen different kind of entities trying to figure that out right now because they all see the same thing I see, which is the offshore space is getting scary in terms of like how many outs you have and how much they're willing to take and how aggressively you end up impacting the market if you're betting there. And so the idea of peer-to-peer exchange is the obvious solution to this for anyone who is kind of at my level and people who are above me in terms of getting liquidity down on sports betting. And at that point, I think that overall it just looks and feels super different than it does now, where you have coverage that's more like CNBC style in terms of like, what's happening with prices and, what news came out today and what the reaction was. Matt Ryan mispracticed this morning and the Colts moved, 20% in their win probability. So somebody probably knows something, or, like coverage like that, that's smarter and ties actual market activity to the news cycle is going to be pretty cool to see come. And I think that'll be a nice addition. As far as, the betting options themselves, like, the big fish, the legal operators, the FanDuels of the world seem to have captured some, the imagination of the punters with the same game parlays. That's not going away anytime soon. So there's probably going to be a little bit of a bifurcation where the new players and the casual players are punting and the people who taking this more seriously are trying to get liquidity on an exchange.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think one of the things that there's a lot of correlation between, I think, the stock market and sports betting, which you are bringing up here. And as someone that, Eric and I think a lot about the way that consumers will interact with betting. And I think about the way that, certain places have made retail stock buying, right, very maybe too easy for some people, right? But there is a real advantage to being able to take something like, that can be really complex, and instead of presenting someone with an options chain, making it a little more easy to engage. And I think maybe the key there is giving people the resources to do things intelligently and helping them not make mistakes in it, where maybe that has been some of the sins of some of the the stock exchange retail shops.
I think it's more satisfying to get involved in prediction markets that are finite, like sports. That'll drive a lot of people into this. And then I think you can expand prediction markets beyond sports in finite stuff. And I think the two most interesting betting markets, if you are really into the market side of it, the two most interesting betting markets in the last 5 years were the 2022 election and the NBA draft #1 overall, and neither had anything to do with the sports event. And so the idea that you can create prediction markets around other things and and really create some interesting, innovative ways for the high stakes players to get down will be fun.
I thought you were going to mention mortality pools. Those are my favorite.
I'm sure
odds to die next among celebrities is really what I'm craving liquidity for. But I think maybe
somebody will offer
some moral problems. Yeah, somebody will offer it, and then there's going to be a police stakeout for the person that puts $1 million down on someone. So that was I think that's the appropriate way to close out our podcast. Drew, just pimp any of the good stuff that you're doing that people should check out.
Sure. So providing a lot of content over for NBC Sports Edge, and they're things are moving and shaking over there, so it's tough for me to really even say, hey, check us out here. But like they're doing a whole NBC football kind of betting fantasy crossover focused platform this year that they're putting our stuff on, and then the deep dive is the classic. And if you want a long form podcast that we record at about the same time as the PFF forecast, so it's truly like a blind sample of our opinions versus your guys' opinions. Check those out on Sunday and Wednesday.
Except for maybe it goes in one direction. Maybe I do listen to your shows and kind of at least like you guys do such a great job that I can't help but like the Washington football team schedule one last year. Like you guys dissected it so well. But yeah, that it's such a great show, and you guys are going through team by team. Some podcasts have 2 teams, some have 1, but you guys are going through team by team as over the last few weeks or so. It's really good.
Maybe we should sell them as a bundle. There
we go. Now we're talking.
All right, Drew, thank you so much for hanging out with us. We will see you hopefully before our stadium swim.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, if you guys are going out to Vegas for contest signups, let me know. I'll be out there a couple times between now and then. Yeah,
I need to do that. We'll coordinate there. Maybe we'll get the big guy out there.
Someone's
got to pay for the lap dances for the big guy.
I'll definitely be out there in August and September. So hope to see you guys.
Awesome. Thank you, Drew. Peace.
Hey, best of luck.